Hey guys! So much for the tolerant left, am I right? I have been exposed for the disgusting hypocrite I am. For alas, I am superphobic. I'm not proud of it. I've struggled with these reactionary feelings for so long, you know? Growing up in a supportive environment where people tell me my gender and sexuality are valid just kind of made me hate straight people? Fuck, I can't take that seriously. God damn it. What's up, gremlins? My acting was absolutely horrible, I know. That was a joke, by the way. I don't hate straight people. Just ask Juice, the guy I roleplay straight sex with all the time. No, okay, I'm done memeing. That was my last meme. Hating straight people is genuinely stupid, though. So this lad on TikTok made a video creating a new sexuality.
Yo guys, I made a new sexuality now, actually. It's called Superstraight, okay? Since straight people, or straight men as myself, I get called transphobic because I wouldn't date a trans woman. You know, they're like, would you date a trans woman? I'm like, no, why? That's a female. No, like, that's not a real woman to me. Like, I want real woman. No, you're just transphobic. So now, I'm super straight. I only date the opposite gender, women, that are born women. So you can't say I'm transphobic now because that's just my sexuality, you know?
But unlike the tons and tons of micro-labels coined on Tumblr that all of one person or even 0 people use, this one's getting a lot of attention on Twitter, TikTok of course, and Animal Crossing? Guys? You okay? And I'm not gonna lie, I was originally just going to ignore this. Be a little salty on Twitter maybe, but like, not bring it to YouTube. Come on. But then, oh boy, Blair fucking White made a video validating this bullshit and spreading misinformation about what it means. So, I'll come back for you. So I think the most important concern to address here is obviously the innocent confusion. There are a lot of people who seem to be expressing genuine uncertainty about this. I want to build a solid framework for these people so I can better explain later in this video why so many people are against this whole super straight trend. I think it's valid to have questions and concerns. Having a want to understand is good. Asking questions is good, so let's answer them. First question, is it transphobic to have a preference of gender presentation, sex characteristics, or other things related to sex and gender? No. Second question, is it transphobic to reject a trans person because they do not match your preferences? No. Third question, if I'm a straight man and I'm okay with dating a trans woman with a penis, does that make me a little bit gay or bi or whatever? Don't kill me, but that answer is such a vast ocean of nuance and implications that I think I need to address lest I do a disservice to the LGBTQ community as a whole by simply sweeping this issue under the rug. Way too many people ask this question. Even my husband, Fluffy, has asked me this question, and various things stemming from this question. ContraPoints has a whole 44-minute video on it. It is obviously not cut and dry like people may hope it to be. So let's get this out of the way right off the bat. You do not need to invalidate someone's gender identity in order to reject them sexually. If your criteria for how straight or gay you are includes, that's not a real woman, that has nothing to do with your attraction and everything to do with your bigotry. Likewise, nobody is less of a woman or a man because they have different sex characteristics. That is not what gender is. You can be a woman with a penis, a man with a vagina and no boobs, a woman with boobs and a penis, all that. Your body does not determine your gender. Alright? We're establishing this right off the bat because I don't want anyone to get me wrong. I am not going to be questioning anyone's gender identity here. However, when people like Blair White and anonymous Twitter user X say stuff like this,
I would never want to be with a man who felt like he had to go on a date with me or had to entertain the idea of being with me simply for woke points or to avoid being called a bigot.
Let me guess, you're a suck the D or you're a bigot type of person?
Stop fetishizing our sexuality. No means no. Trans Pepe Le Pew raping the super straight cat.
It's rape culture to shame someone for not being sexually attracted to something or someone. The bullying is attempted forceful conversion.
Forcing a straight, gay, lesbian person to go to bed with someone they don't want to go to bed with is... what's the word again? Oh yeah, rape?
Pepe Le Pew meme number 2. Super straight is a sexual identity that asks that if you are trans, please don't use the pressure that comes with the accusations of transphobia to manipulate people into dating you. That is rape. Super straight is a sexuality that just means don't rape rape me. How is that bad? Lesbians and gay men face accusations of genital fetishism, demands that they undergo therapy, and rethink their genital preferences. Stealth rape by deception or omission, and an overall climate of gaslighting. No forced dick sucking because that's literally rape culture.
Maybe the reason why no one wants to date you isn't because of your gender, but because you're an unlikable.
I don't think it's adequate for me to just say, "Nuh-uh, that's not what we mean," and move on. If I just said that most people don't think this way, people could easily prove me wrong by just sending me screenshots of all the tweets and posts and videos that do push this narrative. Hell, if you follow the right people online, your feed can be filled with anything you want it to be. You can find this stuff, so I'm not gonna go that route. Instead, I think it's more accurate to say that Blair's reading of this attitude is very misaligned with what people who think this way actually want and why they think this way. I think the way she framed it in her video is frankly dangerous and further pushes the trans predators narrative she loves so much. She keeps saying that this attitude is rapey.
It's obviously completely valid to exclude trans people from your dating pool if you're not attracted to them, and anyone who says otherwise is honestly kind of rapey. Anytime you're trying to control or police who dates who has sexual relations with who, like, you're creepy and you're a problem. Stop. It's creepy. It's rapey.
Follow me, okay? Blair says that the attitude that is transphobic to have a genital preference is rapey because you're forcing someone to date you or have sex with you even if they aren't attracted to you. And then she pairs that with, so many trans activists think this.
And it's so overdone, it's so overblown. And this whole debate has been going on for years, and it's like, what is gonna stop it? What is gonna be the nail in the coffin that we don't have to talk about this anymore?
And it's a typical part of gender ideology.
And it's honestly one of the most toxic elements of the whole gender ideology debate.
Let that sink in. This is just the trans bathroom hysteria all over again. If you think that a huge chunk of trans people have a rapey ideology, then you are once again painting trans people as creepy predators, or at the very least, toxic and entitled people. Which doesn't surprise me coming from Blair White, whose favorite hobby is throwing literally every trans person, including herself, under the bus so that she can get head pats from bigots. But this video isn't about that. This is obviously a really harmful thing to spread around, so it's not good enough for me to just claim that this attitude isn't very prevalent. What if it was? What if it is and I just don't know? We're not playing the facts and logic game. Instead, we need to examine why a trans person might feel this way and why, even though it's wrong to call someone transphobic for having preferences, it is not predatory in nature. The actual full discussion, if one can have the full discussion about what our labels truly mean and all the little factors that someone considers when deciding what to call themselves and what counts as straight or gay, is really fucking long and complicated, and I will link videos in the description that delve deeper into that and maybe even make a future video about it myself. But for the purposes of this video, I need to summarize a bit. There are 3 things that I think come into play here the most, and I will elaborate on each of them. Number 1, the first factor is that the line between gender and sex is blurred now more than ever, and that causes a lot of conflict in these discussions. So many people nowadays take sexual orientation to be in reference to gender rather than sex, because we spent so much time trying to explain that gender and sex are different and therefore someone born with a penis can still be a woman, and so on. So there is a very blurry idea of what these terms truly mean anymore. Everyone uses them a little differently. Again, this is a huge discussion, and I do not want to go into every in, out, and upside down of it here. For now, I'll use my husband as an example. He defines his attraction based on gender presentation. Curves, boobs, the female figure, maybe some feminine mannerisms or traditional feminine clothing, etc. So he could be attracted to a cis woman, a trans woman, dick or not, a non-binary person who presents feminine, or a trans man who presents feminine. Not to say that he isn't a man, but simply to observe how he looks and what features are attractive to him. Some people define their attraction based on gender alone, so any woman is on the table, they need only identify as one. Some people define their attraction based on sex characteristics alone, so vaginas only and forget presentation. I don't actually know if there are people who genuinely experience attraction in such a strict way. I don't know if that's even possible, but these are ways I have seen people define their labels. This is also a huge source of the bisexual versus pansexual debate, which again, I will not go into detail about here, but it's essentially based on the same contention about whether attraction is based on gender, sex, presentation, or some combination of those, and whether or not the pansexual label is necessary or the bisexual label limiting. People say bi is too focused on genitalia, and pan has no standards for anything. There are implications about non-binary genders in there. There are generational clashes, all that good stuff. Go watch the movie. There's also the fact that non-binary people complicate this further. Like, I don't really think it makes sense to say I'm not attracted to non-binary people, because that doesn't even mean anything. There are no physical traits that signify a non-binary person. Some non-binary people medically transition and some of them don't. That literally narrows absolutely nothing down. The YouTuber called Verily Bitchy actually has some really great videos on that. I'm gonna link them in the description. They're really worth a watch. Actually, every video I link in the description is worth a watch, and I'm gonna link all of them. Except Blair's video. I'm gonna link her video, but it's bad.
But I think we ought to be careful here, because we may end up absolving people of the responsibility to be kind to trans people by suggesting that their assholery is just a different sexual orientation, thereby validating their cissexism and transphobia.
Holy shit, this video came out 2 months ago. They predicted Superstraight, guys! This is all to say that people in the LGBTQ community can be confused about what these older labels mean for trans people and non-binary identities. But the trans ideology I advocate for is not one that shames people for defining their label based on physical sex characteristics rather than gender identity. The second factor I want to discuss is the third option, which we all know is murder. I think there is an element of internalized biphobia that I think can play into someone refusing to call themselves bi or pan or whatever, instead of straight and okay with any sex organs or bodies. However, there's also a strong desire within the LGBTQ community to, of course, validate trans people's identities, and because of point number one, that leads to people fearing they are transphobic if they say that dating trans people makes them bi. Because if you are someone that defines your sexual orientation based on gender identity, or includes gender identity in that definition, then calling yourself bi because you would date a trans person would imply that you see women and trans women as different genders, which is not what trans people tend to vibe with, I'll be honest.
In other words, these people tell you trans women are women, but... and then they say something that shows they don't really think trans women are women at all.
It's why ContraPoints makes all those biological woman jokes in her videos, because there's no such thing as a biological woman, the gender, only a biological female, the sex. But if you define your sexual orientation based only on presentation and/or sex characteristics, then you aren't necessarily saying that a trans woman has a different gender than a cis woman, just that you have two options for what genitals you'd be down for instead of only one. And I guess by this definition, pansexual would mean fine with any presentation and genitals combined. So if you define your attraction based on sex characteristics, then by your definition, you're bi if you would date cis women and trans women. Not because either one of them is any less of a woman, but because you're attracted to two different sex characteristics in women. And to add to my husband's example, I suppose he would be bi using either definition because his attraction includes all women regardless of their sex characteristics, and men or NBs who present feminine. So in the gender sense, he's bi, and in the physical sense, he's bi. However, to come back to my original statement, there is a lot of fear around telling everyone that you're straight or gay and then later admitting that you might be bi or gay. For straight people, men especially, there's a fear of being called gay if you aren't strictly into women who were born with a vagina. We've all heard the no homo and it's not gay if it's for this reason stuff. For gay people, I imagine there's a fear of people claiming that they were never gay or it really was just a phase if they later come out as bi, which creates a fear of embracing that label after they've already come out as gay. And that can happen in other ways too. Again, ContraPoints made a whole video about her experience realizing that she's a trans lesbian and how society's judgment of her played a huge role in that. And these types of attitudes speak to some clear internalized biphobia or homophobia, which someone could have for any number of reasons other than the two I listed. And I think this is a really good parallel to the issue of when is rejecting trans people transphobic and when isn't it. There's a valid reason someone might insist that they are still straight even if they would date a trans person. That reason is because they define their sexual orientation at least somewhat based on gender identity and don't want to invalidate trans people by implying that they aren't really the gender they identify as. There is also a problematic problematic reason to insist that you're still straight even if you would date a trans person, and that reason is trying to avoid associating yourself with being gay or bisexual, or you have a problem with bi people or the bi label. Similarly, there are valid reasons why trans people would be excluded from your dating or attraction preferences. There are non-bigoted reasons to not want a relationship with a trans person. Genital preferences, wanting to have biological children with your partner, feeling as though you would struggle being around them because of your own dysphoria or trauma, whatever your personal reasons are. And like with the bi example, there are also problematic reasons to not want relationships with trans people. Whether it's having a problem with trans people as a whole, their ideology, thinking that they're lying or crazy, etc. And sometimes it can be really hard to figure out which side of that coin someone falls onto. It can even be hard for people to figure that out about themselves as well. I think that if you feel that you wouldn't date any trans person, you should examine the reasons why and make sure they don't stem from subconscious bias against them. For your own sake and for the sake of trans people, I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you go through life never criticizing why you feel the way you do about things. And that leads me into number 3. The most notable factor that I think contributes to some people having a knee-jerk reaction to someone's rejection of a trans person, or discussions like what I just talked about, is simply this. Trans people have to deal with so much shit regarding people arguing with them over their gender identity. Transphobes will use their own labels to intentionally invalidate trans people, as with the classic example, "I'm straight so I only date real women," or "I won't date a trans woman, I'm not into men." So many trans people are understandably on guard between having to argue with bad faith actors about these things and trying to navigate relationships without bumping into some asshole trying to disprove their gender identity instead of just saying they don't like dicks. I mean, if the super straight trend itself isn't an example of people deliberately using sexual orientation to tell trans people that they're invalid, I don't know what is, but I will get into that in a little bit. So I'm frankly pretty understanding of why trans people might be on edge or suspicious when someone rejects them and explains why in a hurtful way. Even if someone just misspeaks or isn't sure how to say it with the most tact, it can be a little sus if you don't know that the person doesn't mean it in a bad way. Katsune explained it perfectly in the first few seconds of their video on this.
The problem is that, like, I have people asking me, is it transphobic for me not to want to date a trans person? And I want to say no, but the person is commenting extremely transphobic things, and it's like, I don't know how to you're being transphobic right now. It's like, I don't think that, like, the question whether or not you want to date a trans person is relevant to the conversation of whether or not your actions are transphobic. Take that out of it and just, like, look at what you're saying about trans people. They're gross. I can't get over the fact they were born X gender. They're lying to me. They're a million different things, right? And so it's like, just take the question, then, should I don't want to date someone, out of that. Take that out of it and just look at what you're saying about trans people. That's transphobic.
The video is only 10 minutes long, would recommend, go watch it. And just as I don't expect every cis person to know the perfect language to exclude trans people from their preferences with tact, not every trans person knows how to explain their feelings in a way that's understandable to someone who isn't familiar with all their experiences. I legitimately struggled to find someone on Twitter who could explain the difference between having a preference and being transphobic using preferences as an excuse. And I found 2 that worked for me. The rest were either confusing, misleading, or just no. So yeah, I'm not justifying the mindset that you're transphobic if you reject a trans person for any reason, but to say that the mindset is born of predatory and rapey intentions is so laughably off from the truth. I don't know where people got this idea that trans people want to fucking hold straight people hostage and make them have sex with them lest they be Twitter cancelled for being transphobic. But the fuck? I don't know about y'all, but actual transphobia is an instant turnoff for me. Why the hell would any self-respecting trans person want to fuck you after you opened your mouth and revealed what a scumbag you are? Alright then, now that I've taken care of that garbage, let me tell you the actual truth about super straight and what it means. First of all, and again, redundant, but...
no, like, that's not a real woman to me, like, I want real women.
Yeah, there's red flag number 1. Telling trans people that they're not really their gender, they're not a real woman, is transphobic. You don't get to decide that for anybody. We've had this conversation a million times, so that's the end of that point. Secondly, there's a huge difference between having preferences for what you're attracted to and preemptively rejecting an entire, extremely diverse group of people in a way that's just inconsistent with your actual preferences. Being dishonest about what you're physically attracted to so you can say that trans people are gross or not really their gender or whatever other transphobic bullshit that directly fuels your preference is gross. And that's what this super straight thing is based on. It's the same as religious people saying, I don't support gays, but it's my religion so you can't call me a bigot. They want an excuse to not look at themselves and think critically about where their reactions to trans people come from. And if you don't define your attraction strictly by sex characteristics, then excluding all trans people as a whole is stupid. And I know that a lot of people who don't think they'd be attracted to trans people do not define their attraction that strictly. It's just a presupposition that people may have, either because they're transphobic or because they just didn't think about it that much. Lots and lots of people are attracted to how someone looks, not their genitals alone. I have a friend whose boyfriend once said, I don't think I'm attracted to trans women, because in his mind he saw trans women as just people who look masculine and use she, her pronouns. But then my friend showed him a picture of Gerard Way, gender bent with an app, not even actually trans, and that made him go, oh, well, I guess I was wrong, actually. He looks really attractive as a woman. I'd date him. Like, nobody looks at somebody and goes, oh wow, they look really good, but they're thinking of their dick or their vagina. Like, you don't see someone's genitals when you see them and you think they're attractive. To create an entire sexuality in order to exclude every single trans person is, well, it's a little bit fucking sus, if I'm honest. Because I don't believe that most people are incapable of even looking at a trans person and finding them attractive, even if they don't necessarily want to date them. It just makes no sense. If you look at a woman that you don't know is trans and go, oh wow, she's pretty, and then you find out she's trans and you go, she's not pretty anymore, that makes no sense. That just seems like the, no homo thing to me, which ain't a good look. You can be attracted to someone without wanting to date them. Now, again, if you have preferences that exclude trans people, that's fucking valid. That's not transphobic. You could be attracted to a woman's breasts or presentation or curves or voice, but not her dick, which could turn you off sexually. Or maybe you want to have kids or something, and that's fine, because you don't have to misgender her to have that preference. Trans people don't think their genitals make them their gender. You saying that you're just not into dicks or vaginas or boobs shouldn't offend anyone, because that's what sexual attraction is. If you run into an individual trans person that takes offense to you saying that, that doesn't mean that you're wrong or that you should force yourself to change your preferences. And it never means that you have to date anyone. The conversation was never about trans people being desperate for straight people to date them. However, that's not a real woman to me. That is needlessly contrarian about her gender and focused on protecting some weird idea of himself in his head rather than a preference that makes any goddamn sense. Too long didn't read. Not wanting to date trans people based on sex characteristics? Cool. Poggers. Very good for them. Insinuating that wanting to date a trans person means you're attracted to their assigned gender at birth? Not cool. Very unpoggerly. With all this explained to you, let's move on to my third point. Superstraight was specifically created as nothing but a troll psyop to hurt trans people and make the LGBTQ community look bad. See, the fact that anybody was genuinely confused about this had me a little concerned at first. Like, can we really not recognize blatant transphobia and the simple differences between that and just having a preference? Then I realized that's why they framed it like this. They specifically frame it as, this is my sexuality and people are saying it's wrong. This is just like the bigotry they preach against.
I remember growing up when there was a lot more common to have, like, you know, evangelical and super religious people trying to police how gay people shouldn't be with, you know, members of the same sex. And, you know, I hated that and I fought against that. That's a little less common now than y'all, little wokies, who are trying to police now sexuality and who is with who.
Wow! So they've essentially disguised the so much for the tolerant left meme to make it harder to grasp. Because people recognize the gross transphobia inherent in what Superstraight means, and the entirely public displays of textbook transphobia from everyone who identifies as Superstraight, the people calling it out are now being accused of not practicing what they preach. And because people were stupid enough, and I do stress this was really fucking dumb, I can't believe anyone didn't realize how this sounded, to try and debunk Superstraight with, it's not a real sexuality, you just made it up, has given the transphobes plenty more ammo to say that we're just cherry picking to fit our narrative. Because, newsflash guys, that's the exact same thing trans meds say about non-binary people, and Tumblr xenogenders. Come on! I can quickly explain the difference, by the way, but this looks so bad. I genuinely don't know how anyone who supports non-binary identities typed that and didn't immediately delete it. But okay, for people who heard the Superstraights, or Blair, say that it's hypocritical for people to believe in
abrosexual, demisexual, gerontosexual, gynosexual, intrasexual, calosexual, multisexual, homosexual, sapiosexual, and literally hundreds more.
But not Superstraight, let me make a quick distinction. These little Tumblr genders are harmless expressions of feeling, largely created by young people discovering themselves. And while I have my own thoughts about how much sense some of these labels make, my general opinion is that these people are just figuring themselves out and shouldn't be made fun of for that. They will mature and settle into a label that's actually somewhat indicative of anything. Like I did! I got into that micro-label thing too for a while, but now I've grown past it and I don't need it anymore. These people will too. Calm down. Superstraight, on the other hand, is not that. It is a political statement. It is actually very similar to a hashtag that lefties on Twitter started last 9/11 because it was very close to the initial BLM protest sparked by the killing of George Floyd. The hashtag All Buildings Matter was All Buildings Matter. Still funny, guys. The hashtag All Buildings Matter was a means of mocking the common conservative phrase All Lives Matter and holding up a mirror to some of these cherry-picking weirdos who feel the need to trivialize every single murder of a black person or even other mass killings of marginalized people in hate crimes, while at the same time crying in public about 9/11 and repeating never forget because they want to virtue signal and feel like good people for sending thoughts and prayers that day. The hashtag was not an expression of true beliefs. The people using it didn't actually think that 9/11 wasn't important or that the lives lost that day didn't matter. They were making a direct parallel to how the same people who constantly bring up 9/11 specifically all the time will also turn around and trivialize systemic racism by saying, all lives matter! Why are you complaining about this?
That would be like if your wife came up to you and was like, do you love me? And you were like, baby, I love everybody. What are you talking about?
It made a lot of conservatives mad, and that was a fun day. That's what Superstraight is. It's a troll idea meant to make trans people mad and to point out a perceived hypocrisy in the LGBTQ community. Except in Superstraight's case, there is no hypocrisy because no one is invalidating your sexual orientation. They're just recognizing a blatant campaign against the idea that trans people are valid. Because nobody who genuinely respects trans people and their struggles would participate in this shit. They're not even trying to hide it. Get with the program. If you were genuinely confused about why people say that Superstraight is a transphobic trend, I hope you understand it now. I hope this helps dispel the false narratives pushed by this movement, and the self-hating idiot in the room who practically misgendered herself to support it.
Jesus fucking Christ, I really don't want to be in this timeline.
One more thing, and this is directed towards people who are justifiably mad about this cringy trend. Don't say that you hope people die. Don't say that you want to kill people. That's really stupid. And the Superstraights are taking the time to report people who break TOS by saying this stuff. Some people have already been suspended over it. You are playing right into their hands, and in general, you should have enough self-control to not say stuff like this. Death threats are taken very seriously by every company because they have to be, or the companies can be held liable for enabling murder if it does happen. That's why we say in Minecraft if we absolutely have to get some violent feelings off our chests. Though I usually use it against myself because I like to jokingly use the expression, I want to die, but I know lots of people actually want to die and I don't want to disrespect their pain or worry people. Right, with that unrelated tangent out of the way, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is obviously not the 28-page monstrosity that I'm currently working on, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Also, to end this, the term Superstraight was actually coined by comedian Robin Tran to mean the exact opposite thing in 2017. So you should all go retweet her video and celebrate straight men loving all women because they're just that straight. Thanks for watching, fuckers! I'll see you next time!